Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. We are here at the National Council of Indian Culture and we are going to be having a conversation with the curator of the Heritage Center, Mr. Richard Rampersad. We're speaking about Indian impact on Trinidad and Tobago, but we're doing so within the context of Indian Arrival Day. How are you doing, Mr. Rampersad? Thank you so much.
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for being here and spending this time with us.
No, it's really a pleasure because the last time we spoke via Zoom, the last time we didn't have this backdrop with something as...
Fine art, right?
Not just fine art, there's the fine art, there's also the Ramayana that came on a boat brought by family members, faithful, something to help root them in who they were. And with that, I want to start off this conversation by asking, Indian Arrival Day, what does it mean to you?
Thank you. Indian Arrival Day, it means many things to me. When I consider the narrative and the story of Indian Arrival Day and what my ancestors or my pitris would have endured to come to Trinidad, it is a stark reminder that even in my darkest of times, I can rise, I can be the best version of me. The story of East Indian indentureship is really one of resilience and persistence. And their degree of faith, the degree of faith that these people had, I mean, it's something that remains as a source of inspiration for me when I look at that. So those key ideas of faith, resilience, hope, and the sacrifice for a better tomorrow, these are the lifelong lessons I think I can live with, and generations, society as a whole, can live with these kind of ideologies.
And in terms of investing, taking lessons from the past, investing them in the present for future selves, future generations, we go to the work of the NCIC, please. How does the work of the NCIC help carry that narrative forward?
Okay, just by way of information, for those who may not know, the acronym NCIC stands for the National Council of Indian Culture. The NCIC has been in existence for many years and they have been doing a lot of work where the promotion and propagation of East Indian culture is concerned. The NCIC has two major signature events, which is the Diwali Nagar activity, which is a week of festivities, 9 nights to be specific, and we also have our Indian Heritage Month offerings, whereby the month of May, we mount a series of activities from academic events to exhibitions to cultural, visual, and performing arts events. So it's a plethora of events happening here at this very site, this very venue in the month of May. The NCIC is, I like to describe it as the premier, the leading, perhaps the most popular East Indian organization in the country that does the promotion and propagation of culture, East Indian culture.
But it's interesting that you speak about that though, because even like before we started to have the conversation, we were wondering how we were going to couch it, whether or not we were going to lean on spiritual or religious aspects of it, or we were going to deal more with culture side or other social aspects. And it's really amazing how interwoven those conversations can be, and the way that the effects and the influences are interwoven in our society, because there may be people who may not be able to speak a word of Hindi or another language coming from India, but at the same time, when you're talking about, you're able to say rasgulam or burfi, and you're pronouncing it correctly because this is how you've learned it, but almost like learning via osmosis. So even like having those 9 nights and the amount of things, information that is transmitted, I think is really beautiful. But in terms of that month of activity though, academic, cultural, in between, give me a little more idea about that, please, some of those things that take place.
Okay, so the NCIC would be mounting a series of events. We will be having visual arts exhibitions. We will be having a breakfast seminar where we have several speakers speaking on different topics as it pertains to the East Indian experience in the Caribbean. I have a little document here that goes in a bit more details about that particular type of thing. And at this point, I want to put some emphasis on that breakfast seminar because it features 4 prominent speakers. We have Dr. Radhika Mahes, who will be speaking on quote-unquote free land for all indentured immigrants. And we're really trying to demystify and debunk some narratives or certain ideologies that may not have been factually correct. So it's an excellent seminar for persons pursuing history or just persons who wish to be a little more informed and enlightened on the whole indentureship exercise and that experience and what it was. We have Professor Brinsley Samaru, who is also a member of the Heritage Center, that would be speaking on the Bong Kuli Pass. Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh would be speaking on the education of the Gurmichas, and Dr. Sherian Singh, who would be speaking on land issues and land legitimacy and that type of thing. So it's it's interesting topics that these presenters are going to shed light on. So this is kind of like the academic aspect of things. We will be having a film screening whereby we're screening a local movie that goes by the name Agman. It speaks about the arrival of some of the East Indian indentured to our shores. We're going to be having a jewelry exhibition because some of the indentures that came were jewelers. Some were potters, so we're going to have a pottery exhibition. And also on the main stage, we're going to have a series of performances, song, music, and dance, right? We are having local classical singing, also known as Lokgeet, on one of the nights. We're going to be having Sashra Sangeet, classical performances. So it's really a very monumental project planned for the month of May, and I'm really excited to share these things. You know, I encourage persons to log on to our social media, NCICTT, even our website, ncic.com, and it's a good way to be in the know, stay in touch, and get a sense of what we have planned, because it's really a lot of exciting stuff.
But I want to cut across, man, because I find you talk about nothing that you doing, Mr. Rampersad, in the sense that you are an artist. You also bring forth other artists into this world, or allow people to explore their intrinsic or latent artistic talent. And are you still doing the artwork with the rice? Because
Yes.
with the colored rice? So take me through that a little bit.
Last year we featured Rangoli, so this is what he's speaking of, whereby you use colored rice to produce patterns and designs on the floor. We also hosted the painting exhibition, fine art exhibition. This year we're changing things a bit. We're not going to be having any paintings being exhibited this time. We really try to delve into different forms of creative expression. So we want to look at the Sona tradition, which is the jewelers. Like I mentioned in the interview earlier, there were a lot of jewelers. There were some jewelers that came during the indentureship period. So we want to bring forth some insights into what did these jewelry look like. So we're going to have persons exhibiting pieces inspired by that Indo-Caribbean jewelry. We are having a photographic exhibition that features photos of the East Indian indentures. And we're also going to look at those vintage photos to see what was life like for the East Indians in Trinidad after indentureship, right? And it would be done visually through the form of photos. It's a photographic exhibition. It's an exhibition in black and white. So that is something really exciting, and I'm really happy to share that. We made an open call for photographs from persons who would have had family photographs and they wish to share. And, you know, through photo elicitation, there's so many narratives and so much insights you can draw from looking at a photo.
But tell me though, is it that you're going to be reproducing the photos, you're going to be using the photos and give it back to them? Because they say a picture tells 1,000 words, but the amount of value that a family member who has this photograph that is in black and white would be ascribing to that. I think it may take a lot for them to actually say, okay, well, you can use this, so I'm hoping you
Yeah, these articles are very sentimental, and it means a lot because in some instances it's basically all they have of their ancestors and that kind of thing, the photo. But what we did, we issued a digital submission. So persons were invited to, or encouraged rather, to scan images of their work, and we exhibit the replicas or the reproductions of those scans. So they retain the original imagery, and we exhibit the copies of it.
Very glad to hear. Well, we take a short break. When we come back, I want to ask about how it is you decide on the theme for the year, as well as some other things that we can look forward to within this month. And I guess we'll finish off with an Indian arrival message from you. So stay with us, we'll return with more.
So it came on the boat. Now this was really what they held on to, their scripture.
And that's one of the things I was talking about in terms of looking at the way that there's spirituality mixed in with his history, the socio-cultural root, and you just have something that you're able to latch on to that reminds you of who you are, where it is you came from, what it is you're going to do, and just helps give you that strength to move forward.
And the grounding too, because the Ramayana speaks about the story of Lord Rama when he went in the forest, 14 years exile, and then the kidnapping of Sita. And so it speaks about the whole idea of faith and devotion and that type of thing, which is what is embodied here. And these are the attributes that they had with them whilst they crossed the dark waters.
But I could only imagine this sort of faith that Mr. and Mrs. Ragbir had in the NCIC to say this, which has been in our family, because right now I'm talking about it and my pause reason, to be able to give this to you, for you to be the caretaker of this tomb.
Well, it speaks to the credibility of the organization and the confidence, obviously, that they have with us to secure it and to keep it well. And generations to come would come to this venue and they would be able to look at this document here.
Welcome back. We are here at the National Council of Indian Culture. We're speaking with Curator of the Heritage Center, Mr. Richard Rampersad. And one of the things that I appreciate about you, Mr. Rampersad, is literally your age. And that leads us into the question, how are younger individuals having this knowledge and appreciation of their past being embedded into them so that we can take it forward?
And I think that's a very important question. The NCIC has a very active youth arm, and I'm very proud to say that. The youth arm has been doing a phenomenal job engaging the young minds of our country. And I can go on and identify so many projects they would have hosted. But before I delve into that, for our upcoming month of events, the youth arm would actually be taking charge of one of the nights, in the sense that they would be the performers, and the performances, they would be executing song, music, and dance on our stage that night. So the NCIC is really providing a place and a space for this type of cultural product from our youth and our young people. But separate and aside from that, the NCIC youth arm is known for hosting several vacation camps, several outreach initiatives. We have had health clinics and legal aid clinics in the past where we go into respective rural and semi-rural communities and offer these services free. The NCIC youth arm consists of a number of young professionals also, and they often volunteer their time, their service, and their resources to assist other young people in and out of the community here. So they have been doing a lot of work. Most recently, they would have hosted an art competition whereby young persons was asked to produce creative works based on a particular theme. There was a poetry competition as well, and a host of different activities. I remember last year we had a pottery workshop geared towards training young people how to make simple vessels from clay and these type of things. So the young people are in good hands here at the NCIC through the work of the youth arm.
And in terms of that, the work of the youth arm, and I appreciate that response, if there is an idea, somebody has an idea and says that I want to engage the NCIC in this manner, how do they reach out to the NCIC generally or the youth arm specifically to say, well, possibly you might want to think about this, how can we get this done, how can we move forward with this? How do they reach the youth arm, how do they reach the NCIC to get that done?
Persons can connect with the NCIC through our administrative office, which is open on a Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 at the NCIC's compound. There they can come and place their suggestions or their proposals on which project they wish to collaborate with. And persons are also encouraged to message our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. We have a website with our contact information. So I think it's very accessible to reach out to the NCIC to offer the suggestions. And the NCIC would welcome that once it's in keeping with our standards and in keeping with our goals and our mission and our objectives for the organization. Yeah.
And it's interesting, sometimes you see the influence taking place. Like recently, we had a winner, 12 and under, and the way that she was able to marry Indian dance, because she's training in classical Indian dance, but marry it with tropes and themes that are from Trinidad and Tobago, as well as a bit of hip hop in it. And it just expands the consciousness of what is possible, the amount of richness that we have within Trinidad and Tobago. And a lot of that comes from our East Indian brothers and sisters. So in terms of like making those links, what are some of the things, is there anything outside of this physical space in terms of those outreach programs that helps to do that a little more?
Well, that particular presentation that you're describing, that was indeed a pour-raising piece. I thought that it was really, really strong, especially considering the age of the child. I thought that was really, really something amazing. And it really encapsulates what it means to be Trinbagonian there, because she kind of hybridized everything, where the fusion with the East Indian classical dance move and the urban hip-hop influences with it. And it is a supreme emblem of what it means to be Trinbagonian, I think. And this is a concept that we embrace here at the NCIC. We would have several events that would incorporate other cultural elements. We had in the past dance festivals. I remember we had the Rainbow Festival of Dance, and we would have African dancing, the Chinese element present. We'd have the steel pan. So it's really, really a multitude of different cultural elements all coming together.
And it kind of reminds me of the theme, The Journey Continues. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so the journey continues. We acknowledge, we recognize where we came from, and we also are strong in where we intend to go and how we intend to proceed. So the committee would have come together and we would have brainstormed for ideas, and we saw that to be most fitting, more so at this time, because we know we'd be celebrating yet another milestone in our indenture history, and we recognize that now is to allow that journey to continue. And culture is fluid. Things will evolve. It's not static. It's always in flux. It would change, and the journey has to continue.
But Mr. Rampersad, explain that to somebody who says, that's not how I remember it, Do you have conversations like that in terms of like the way that you want to have certain presentations, holding firm to tradition, yet recognizing that tradition is not, and culture is not a static thing, like it says, it moves forward. Are there some of those conversations as well?
Not personally within my circles, but whilst it might be something, who knows, it's still important to maintain certain quote-unquote authenticity of certain things. But it is inevitable that change can happen. And that type of understanding is something that would keep you grounded regardless. And it's good to hybridize and syncretize everything and marry the both elements, maintaining what you may think as the purity of a particular tradition, but still incorporating certain elements that would allow it to grow, to flourish, and to thrive, and also to be appropriate and practical and sustainable in this current era that we live in.
And definitely having a sense of groundedness, okay, with this, and as a solid reference point, I think it really helps so that you know who you are, you know what you, and
where you came from.
And that helps to open possibilities of what you can be, because it's not as though any whim or fancy you'll fall prey to it. But with that in mind, though, we couldn't end this conversation without a message from you for Indian Arrival Day. Thank you.
I think the message for Indian Arrival Day would be the message for any other Indian Arrival Day, is to take the lessons that we would have learned from our ancestors in our daily and our everyday lived realities. Because there's so much. I remember when I started the interview, you would have asked me what Indian Arrival Day means to me. And when I consider the story and the journey that my ancestors would have endured, because the journey need not always be that physical journey of migrating from India to Trinidad, but even when they settled in this space, how did they acclimatize to this foreign environment? And how did they do that from an emotional standpoint? How did they do it from a physical standpoint? And when I consider the key themes of resilience, persistence, and faith, I think that must be the underlying principle as we probe and as we navigate our space moving forward. I like to always reference the story with Siuda Sadhu, who built the mandir in the sea, basically. And you know, what he would have had to endure, the opposition, the whole bureaucratic aspect of that procedure and everything, but through his faith, his determination, and his will, those are the key principles that we must use as the manual in our lives.
And having that vision, moving forward, grounded in that realization of who you are, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Richard Rampersad, Curator of the NCIC Heritage Center. We want to thank you as well. This has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for tuning in.